This company's never been more profitable.
You mean hugely profitable?
I like it.
DavePorter.com presents The Profitable Cleaner, a podcast on commercial cleaning sales and entrepreneurship. The one podcast that's not afraid to discuss real sales strategies with real cleaning professionals that produce real profits and real results.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Profitable Cleaner. I'm super excited today because it literally took us, I want to say like a month and a half almost to schedule this out. So I'm excited that we finally were able to do it. Help me welcome Aaron Koon, Head of National Business Development for Blue Chip Pros. Aaron.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing
I'm
great.
excited to be on The Profitable Cleaner. I've been following the podcast for a couple months now, and a lot of what I'm going to say today, you've already covered on it, but I'm going to go more in depth on how to kill that big well or kill the elephant, as everybody always says in our industry. So these are going to be focused more on our larger targets and how we close them. And so my name is Aaron. I'm out of Atlanta. I'm head of business development for Blue Chip Pros. So my role and responsibility at Blue Chip is to go after the larger national players. So anything that is over 1 million square feet in one building, or anything that encompasses multiple different sites of cleaning and stretches over multiple different states. So like we'll take on one brand and we'll clean everything from their industrial to their office space to their regional centers and their call centers as well. So we can clean all different types of space here at Blue Chip Pros, and we also offer security services as well. So we're out of Cincinnati,
Nice.
Ohio.
Nice. Have you guys been offering services like security service as long as janitorial?
So
Facility
yeah,
management?
we actually started janitorial 38 years ago. And then a couple years back, we actually brought in our VP of security, Jeff Martin. He's been in the industry for a long time. Very good resource. And so for the past couple of years, we've been offering security services to industrial manufacturing. We also do flagging services as well for educational facilities. So
Nice.
we offer a wide variety of security services, and we actually got a request right now because of Hurricane Ian. So coming down, and so when they actually have to evacuate and they're coming back into their facilities, they're asking for security services right now to protect their assets. So interesting things that we got going on right now in janitorial and security. So
I like it. Well, I'm excited to go ahead and get into like really like the whale hunting. I think that there's a lot of people that say they like to whale hunt, and whale hunt, I mean, 1 million square feet, right? Or multi-location, multi-sites. It's not as easy as people think. Sales cycles are longer. So it definitely does require some form of patience. But right before we jump into, Aaron, how long did it take you to get to your position? I'm just really curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in the industry in 2016, came from a marketing agency. And actually, when I came out of college, this guy that I worked for, Matt Hamilton, he worked at OpenWorks, which is a franchise cleaning company. And they're based out of Arizona. But I actually cut my teeth in the industry with the OpenWorks from 2016 to 2019. And then I moved to another company called Diversified Maintenance. Then I went to Tech Services, and now I'm at Blue Chip Pros. I started actually cutting my teeth on your karate shops, your doctor's offices, your smaller facilities, your gyms, your more local facilities. And then as I tried to figure out that, oh, wait, it's the same process that I'm doing for the smaller ones that I can be doing for the larger ones. So I took that same exact process as when I started, as far as money making activities. And I call it the MMA, you know. I'm not going to get in the octagon or anything and fight anybody, but those are my money making activities. So I try to do all my administration work after or before work. All my money making activities are going to come between that 8 and 5. So those, you might ask, what are they? Local chapters. Join your BOMA, your IFMA. Cold calling. I'm a big cold caller, so I like to get out. Tuesday and Thursdays are usually my cold calling days. And if it rains, I'm in the rain because I believe that lady at the front desk is going to feel sorry for me and give me that name. So that's a little ninja trick of mine. I like to get out when it's raining or storming. I probably wouldn't go out in Hurricane Ian, but if it's just a little local rainstorm, I'm in there. Call blitz. I'm very strategic on that as far as my phone call time. So I like to go 8 to 9, 12 to 1, 5 to 6 when they're usually around their phone and they're not in meetings. So those are kind of my call blitz strategic deals. Dial for dollars. Another ninja trick that's helped me out, and shout out to my country club. I joined a country club here in Ackworth, Georgia, and there's a lot of people actually in the industry, and they've connected me to some of my my recent wins. So shout out to Governor's Town Club here in Ackworth, Georgia. But join your country club. There's good people out there. So social media blitzes. What I mean by that, Angel, is getting out on LinkedIn. And I do that at night usually, and I add, and that connection starts to grow, and then they'll see, oh, I got 126 mutual friends with you. Like, let's see what this guy's about. And so they'll start talking to you and reaching out, and they'll finally realize, oh, that's what you do. And so when there's a problem that arises or an issue that they need help with, they usually reach out and ask me. And so all we're doing is connecting the dots. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all we're doing is we're trying to connect the dots. And then another way to get into these big elephants and one of my money-making activities is referrals. And I don't mean that by like asking you for a referral, Angel. What I do is I call a different department. So I might like call the marketing department at AT&T and ask who makes decisions on facilities. They might not know, but they know that they can get you to the right department or the right person, and then you can start there, and then you can refer and say, hey, I actually came in through Angela Thomas or whoever the person might be. And so it becomes a warm referral there. And it was just a random phone call to a random department. I've called sales guys before and asked for their help because they're in the same grind that we are. So there's different techniques. No, I love that.
Yeah, we love being like I always say, like an octopus, right? You want to be able to touch different departments, have your hands a little bit on everything, and then I even heard of a strategy where you basically, and we've done it, where once you have contact with like 2 or 3 departments and it's still not the person, you put them all in one email, which is really interesting. I really like it. Let me ask you. So you mentioned a lot of different ways to get into the door, right? I mean, the classic cold calling. Dial for dollars. I love the country club, your local chapters, call blitzes. I haven't heard anybody say call blitzes, which I love call blitzes. How do you choose when, like, obviously there's been a lot of trial and error when it comes down to like, which one do I do? What works? How do somebody hearing this, how do you figure out where you should start or how you should encompass this like multi-touch approach? Like, how did you come up with it?
Yeah, and it was a lot of trial and error, like you said. And we just talked about this at our Blue Chip Sales meeting yesterday. It's not like you can just go to the University of Colorado Boulder and say, hey, I need a degree in how to sell the elephant here. They're not going to give you that. It's not like take 3 classes here, take 3 classes here. No, it's a lot of trial and error. There's no whiteboard that tells you how to do it. You really got to do everything. And that's why I said it was more important that I do all my administration work afterwards. There is a lot of administration work that goes into it, but set aside from 5 to 7 or 6 to 8 to do that administration work and do all the different activities to get into that door, because I don't think it's just one strategy that's worked for me. All these strategies work for me. And so I think they just work at different times. I do think being strategic about all this is more important, especially for the higher level accounts and the more multi-million-dollar accounts. I think that's why I was talking earlier about my work schedule. I got to keep up with my family schedule and then also manage my sleep schedule, because once I do these prospecting, that's when it becomes a different ballgame than just your local karate shop and your local doctor's office. That's when you're really having to use your brain power, be more strategic about your conversations. And that's why it's important for me to get my sleep and be very engaged that day, because it's a lot different than just me dialing and having to go measure out a karate shop instead of going out to a industrial manufacturing facility that has 1,500 employees that work daily. So it's got to be a lot more strategy that goes into it. But to answer your question, I don't think there is just one like one of these that work better than all. I think it's a good mixture, a good pot that you have to just stir it every day and stay consistent, stay persistent as well. And then just understanding the client's issues. I'm not going to go out there and tell them who I am at Blue Chip. I rarely talk about who I am and the company that I work for. I'm always out there trying to solve their problems. And when I do that, it just comes off more authentic, being a team player. I try to raise the bar as much as I possibly can, believe it's possible, and then embrace the change. And then at the end of the cycle, hopefully I've created a lifelong friend, because this is the most important part to me, because that procurement and that facilities manager, and we all do it. I mean, I've switched jobs. We all switch jobs every couple of years. And so if you can create that lifelong friend that's always going to be in that role, and they're always going to buy from you, you've basically created a lifelong customer and a lifelong partnership. And so when they have any kind of facility service issue and they trust you, guess what? You're getting that first phone call. And if you get that first phone call, you're probably going to win that deal, no matter if they have to bring it to RFP or anything. So it's all about gaining that trust early on and creating that lifelong friendship and that lifelong partnership. So.
No, I would agree with you on making the friendship, making the connections, being out there is super important. I do have to ask the question because you mentioned, like, I do my admin work before work, I do my admin work after work, and you have to fit with your family schedule. I just know that some people listening to this are already thinking like, well, I don't have the time that Aaron has, or I'm not down to sacrifice time with my family. Like, I'm assuming you've had to sacrifice as well.
100%.
How do you balance all of that to make sure, because again, bigger deals, bigger performance, more money, like it all requires a different level of commitment, both to the job and then a level of expectation with the family. Did you have a conversation with the family, letting them know, hey, these are my working hours, or what does that look like? Because I guarantee you someone's scared to either have that conversation right now,
Yep.
or to commit that much to making sure that they hit their goals.
Yep. And I'm always been a goal setter. So, and I'm very organized. My dad came from the Navy background, so I'm very structured. And I think that's where a lot of salespeople, have that missing piece where they can actually improve is on their organization. So we have a family calendar that we review every Sunday, because my daughter, she takes every activity out there. So I have to have a plan for everything. I'm traveling probably 60% every month. Being a national sales manager, I'm having to go out on site walks. I'm having to go out in proposals, because once you go on these large elephants, there's usually a final presentation stage. So hopefully I'm out in the field a lot, making that money. To answer your question, I think a lot of it is organization, communication with the wife, and just understanding that our whole goal and our whole focus is to get those bigger brands. So once we do get those bigger brands to trust us, well, guess what? All this prospecting stuff gets a lot easier, because they're calling you at that point. So the bigger the brand, the more facilities they usually have to clean. And so the more that we have to service. So that's my whole goal to get into these elephants, is getting these bigger brands quicker and faster so they can trust me more, and then it's less prospecting. So I think to answer your question directly, it's a lot of organization, planning, and communication.
Yeah, and then I think in the beginning, it's always the heavy lifting, right? It's always like, okay, I need to start from zero. I need to get in there. So I guess I have two questions here when it comes down to that. So when you begin prospecting, what are some of your wins? Because everybody always just wants that big walkthrough or be invited to the RFP right off the bat, but they don't understand that, like, it's like the book Fanatical Prospecting. Like, you always want to be filling the top of the pipeline, really, and you got to take your wins where you have them. And some of the wins sometimes are not walkthroughs, are not even being considered by the company because they're already in a contract for 2 years left, right? Like, it's not even tender, or they're doing a great job, right? The other cleaner. So what are wins for you? Are wins always walkthroughs, or what else are you looking for when you begin prospecting?
Yes, small wins equal big wins is my thought process on this. And a big win for me is my very first step. If I'm going to take any client, let's just call it Coca-Cola, right? Since they're here in Atlanta. I'm going to call Coca-Cola, my first step is to call the corporate headquarters operator number. So basically call the main number, and I want to talk to the lady that sits at the front desk. She knows more than she's putting on. So to me, a big win is when she gives me a name or she points me in the right direction. And that to me starts off my prospecting stage. So once they give me that name, I can use my tools that I have, and I can find them. And then once I start finding them, that's usually going to be the right path, or they're going to point me in the right direction. Another win for me, a small win that leads to big ones, is just any kind of reply. Because a lot of times that you go after these elephants or these bigger deals, they're going to run an RFP, request for proposal. Usually it's 2 to 3 years, and my whole goal is to build that relationship before the RFP is released. And so I would consider any kind of reply letting you know, hey, we're not coming out to bid right now, but we'll be reviewing this in 2023. Okay, what month? And then I would put it on my RFP list, and I have a list. And so next year comes out, I'll know to call that company a month before, and I'll start trying to build that relationship when I'm in that city. So if they're in Chicago and I'm going up to Chicago for the ISSA show, I'm going to try to stop by, build that relationship, and start it way before the RFP process. Because once you get in the RFP process and they go quiet, I mean, your last communication was your last email before the process started. So you better build that relationship early to win these larger deals.
I like it. I like knowing. I'm a huge believer that the wins don't have to be the appointment. Wins don't have to be the walkthrough. The RFP. It's a whole process. When do you? Okay, so let's say you're like, okay, I got the RFP, but I need to build a relationship. We're huge on that. How do you begin building a relationship with someone, and how do you put their wall down? Because a lot of them will say like, he's just trying to build a relationship because he knows an RFP is coming. Can you give us some insight on that? Like, how do you do it?
Yeah, my mentality is pretty easy, and it's been the same philosophy for the past 5 years. It's solving their issues, and so it's really just being on the same side as the client. And what I mean by that is I'm not looking for me to hit my quota. I'm looking to see how many problems I can solve that year, because I know if I solve enough problems, I'm going to hit my quota. So I'm looking out for the client's best interest. I'm never looking out for mine. I always try to be authentic and be a team player. So like I try to reach out and do jobs before to build up that trust. So if it's like any kind of floor care job, or if they need help on a security service job, I can help them there. If they just need help with a deep clean, or they got a new building that's coming up. Like I said, the bigger brands that you go, the more opportunities there are going to be. So you don't have to get in there for that national RFP early. You can do a side job for them sometimes and build that trust early.
Okay. So how do you identify the problems? We're just gonna get deeper every time, which I love. So so they're saying, hey, I don't have an RFP till the end of 2022. How do you start identifying problems then if they know that there are RFPs coming out later?
Yep. So I give them a call, and when they tell me that, hey, the RFP's coming out in 2023, I would say, oh, that's great. I know that it's very difficult for you to switch vendors when you don't know the vendor and you've been working with a vendor for the last 15 years, and they'll go, yeah, that is the issue. And I go, well, what issues can I help solve that's not related to your current RFP right now? And they'll usually say, "Oh, we could use a better strip and wax in our break room, or there might be a deep clean out in the restrooms because our truck driver has been extremely messy for the whole deal." Or, hey, we had a snowstorm come in; they don't have a snow plowing service. Do you have that service? Yes, we have that service as well. We can come out and we can help you on that, and this is what it looks like. I try to get in with different services. We are lucky here at Blue Chip Pros, and we go after everything, and we do offer a lot of different services. So that's kind of been one of my ways to build up that trust and really before we go into the RFP, because it is very difficult if you haven't worked with that company or worked with that person before. it's very difficult to switch from somebody that's been doing the same work for 20 years, especially when we just came out of a pandemic and they don't want to bring new people into the office. And that's basically an extension to coming into your house. So when you get to that site walk, like that's me telling, or that's them telling me basically, hey, I'm letting this guy in my house. Like, let's see what he's about and let's learn more from him. And maybe he really can solve my problems. And a lot of it is I come off very authentic. I mean, my number one ace spade card back here is I'm authentic, buddy. What you see is what you get. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm there for. I'm not there to make $1 million off of one account. And I think that's what's made me who I am too, because I go out and I just try to solve their problems and be on their same side. And when I'm on their same side and they really see that, they're going to believe me more than they're going to trust me over that other vendor that's just there to get their transactional and make their money and get out. And we see that a 100%. Lot in our industry.
100%. I love, it's funny that nowadays we have to say, oh, I'm authentic, because back in, I mean, that's how it should be always, right? We should never put on a front, but it's true. A lot of people are not authentic. A lot of people don't say how it is. They're not themselves. They're not there for the prospect, and you really have to be there. I love that you win smaller contracts or smaller deals to get your foot at the door, because it's hard for them to understand. Let me ask you something then. What happens a lot of the times is, and I talk to cleaners and they go, okay, well, we called, we did the walkthrough, we didn't hear back. Okay. And then that's it. We just didn't hear back. Or it's, they ended up pushing the project back, or they need to talk to their lawyers to see how they're going to get the agreement. And there's always like all these different things. How do you stay patient through the whole process? And what's like the average sales cycle on something as big as what you guys go to on average?
Man, that is a great question. So yeah, the larger the deals and the sales cycle is way longer. I mean, you already mentioned that earlier. It's because you're going to face a lot of diversity. And what I mean by diversity during these decisions is you might get a decision maker switch. They might switch the way that they made the decision, because it's not always going to be your facilities manager that makes the decision. It's not going to always be your indirect procurement team that always makes the decision. It might be sourcing. It might be the administration team. I've even seen human resources make the decision. So each organization runs it totally different as far as DM switches. And then guess what? When you get a DM switch, you're probably getting a scope creep. So that means that they're probably pushing it back the timeline. And then you might even get a scope change. And so that just delays the process. And I use each one of these opportunities to build that relationship. So my secret sauce kind of, and I'll give you one ninja trick that I like a lot, is I'm always coming to town. So when I'm prospecting, I'm always coming to town to check on another client. And I might not be, but they think I am. So it's creating a sense of urgency. Like I said, I've tried to build that relationship any way I can, because some of these sales cycles are from 9 months all the way up to 2.5 years. And I'm dealing with one right now that it's about 2.5 years, and I feel like I'm the front runner. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's not even going to feel like a win when it gets past that finish line, because I've been working on it so long. So it'll be hard to celebrate it, because I've been celebrating those small wins to equal that one big win. But when it comes, it's going to be nice. But yeah, you just got to be a chameleon and change with it. The quicker that you adapt and become proactive instead of reactive, I mean, you figured it out. I mean, the older I get, I'm starting to see the field one step faster, as we were talking football before we started. But I'm starting to see the field just a little one step faster and trying to build that relationship before it hits the RFP mode. I mean, that's the biggest thing when it comes to these big wells and big elephants.
Well, I like something that you said there. I like everything that you said there, first of all. But to dive deeper on the decision maker change. So the only way that you would know as a great salesperson that a decision maker change has happened is if you're constantly making contact, attempting to make contact, and pushing the deal forward. I don't think a lot of people feel like if they're pushing the deal forward, and pushing is not the same as forcing, just so we're on the same page. A lot of people force a deal, that's different. But when you apply pressure to something, right, like that's when you're able to actually see if they still have the problem, they don't feel the problem, how long they want, how fast they want. So you always have to be applying some form of pressure. right? Pressure versus like force, really. And so my question is, how do you identify if there's been a decision maker change? How often do you stay in contact with these PR deals? Because I'm sure there's times where you look at it, your whole company looks at it, and you're like, oh man, this is a $7 million contract, $2 million contract. Like, this is gonna take me 2 years. Like, I can just tell right now, based on previous history, this will be about 2 years. How do you keep applying pressure through the process to make sure that you're able to capture what's going on in every stage?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, so my number one goal, and I should have talked about this earlier when we were talking about small wins, is I want to try to get the communication to my cell phone. It's 2022. I'm texting a lot of people. So the text gives me a way to get in there and really figure out who they are, because you can tell a lot over texting. I'm doing a lot of communication. I'm trying to find them on LinkedIn, hitting them with their birthdays. If I see their birthday, well, guess what? Hey, happy birthday. So there's another reach point. I also use a program called Thanks. It's THNKS. Since the pandemic, I can't go bring my wife's brownies to their place anymore. So I actually had to get creative and figure out a way to show my appreciation, because I'm a big foodie, and I tell people that right when I meet them. So everybody's a foodie. Everybody has to eat. So there's always a connection right there. So that's my connection, is being the foodie. And then also with this THNKS program, I think it's called Thanks. You can basically send out a coffee, or I can buy the team lunch during their sales meeting or during their operations meeting. Or a lot of things I use is on Zoom Info and LinkedIn. I think you've talked about those programs before in the past. You can find out what's called scoops. So like you can really follow it. And like I said, I like to go after larger companies. So if I see that they're building a new distribution center in Colorado, I'll reach out on text and say, hey, I understand that you got a new facility that's being built. How do you plan on servicing that? And so there's another touch point, because I did research on the company. So there's all kinds of ways to stay involved with them. I like to do it through food, just because everybody's eating it. Maybe talk sports. If they graduated from Georgia and I live in Georgia, hey, they just won the national championship. Georgia's having a great sports year. Talk about it. Reach out to them. Text them during Game 7. Text them during that championship game. I mean, it's all about just relating with that person and building that relationship, because at the end of the day, you've said it several times, and I'll say it again. We're in the people service game, right? So like, we're in the people's business. And so it's how good can you relate to that person? And then how well do they trust you, and how well do they trust you with their bigger portfolio? Because a lot of times that they'll want to start you out with a small piece to see how you nibble. But when you go to these large RFPs, these multi-million-dollar RFPs, they're not giving you a piece of the pie at a time. They're giving you the whole pie at a time. Well, guess what? They ain't going to give that big old pie to somebody that they don't trust. So you better gain that trust early. And I know we've talked a lot about trust, but that's how I gain trust, is and those touch points. So hope that helps.
I like it. I like it. I like it. Definitely helps. How do you make somebody, so you can make somebody like trust you through personal relationships and things like that, right? Like you said, building that connection, being on top of it. How do you build professional trust? Outside of just like, I like you, Aaron, you like Angel. How do you build, okay, blue chips is for real? Like once you get actually to being evaluated as a possible vendor, right? How do you begin building that like image?
So I try to define myself as an operator as well. So I try to go out to all my facilities and clean them, so I understand what I'm actually talking about. I think a lot of the change as you go up larger companies and you try to prospect larger companies, I think a lot of it is they want to make sure that you understand what you're talking about. And yeah, you're a salesperson at the end of the day, and you might not have been a janitor or anything like that, but I'm sure your company has resources that can help you too. I'm a big team sales guy. So like if there's a big building that I think's a little bit past my information and I think I need help, I'll bring in an operator. And they like to talk to the operators because at the end of the day, the operators are the ones that are responsible for cleaning their buildings. So if you can build their trust and get to that operator stage, I think that's a big deal. And I would say 95% of the time, my operator gets involved in my sales process because it is a large deal and I can't just take the elephant down by myself. It takes multiple people to take down an elephant. So it's having a good team and really communicating and more strategy. I mean, like, I don't like to hit them every week. I like to hit them every other month because these are bigger deals. And so when we do get that opportunity to go out there and meet, I want to make sure it's in depth and it's more about strategy and more about the industry and caring about solving their problems. So I don't want to come off as a used car salesman.
100%, right? You don't want to keep like nagging them. I always say like you have to have an intention before reaching out to them. Like what do you want them to think? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? If you can't figure out what you want them to do, how you want them to feel when you reach out, then you probably you're just reaching out to reach out, right? And that's not good either.
Correct.
So you said you bring out your operators. You said you hunt together. You've used the word strategy a lot, and I just to make sure some people catch this. To you, what does sales strategy mean? Like how do you strategically? Because that's a big word, right? There's a lot of type of strategy. So What do you mean when you define strategy?
So when I define strategy is I see how that I strategize from the beginning all the way to the end with this client. So what I mean by that is I'm not in an organization or in a role to go down and just make 150 dials. Like I'm going to make probably 10 dials my day instead of 100. There's a lot of companies that are just going after smaller ones. And so those are called transactional sales. What we're building here is more of a relationship and we're trying to get in with that bigger brand. So that's where the strategy comes in. And so that's where you really got to define who that company is. So if like you're going after a pharmaceutical company and you work with another pharmaceutical company, let them know that you understand that vertical. You understand how a clean room clean is. You understand how to clean the industrial space if you're going after industrial clients. So you understand that there's going to be the same problem at hospital A that there's going to be at hospital D. So you can really strategize on, you've been hearing in the industry that they're not cleaning my clean room from the inside to the outside. They've been cleaning it from the outside to the inside, which is improper way. So you might call that next place and say, hey, we've been helping companies clean their clean room properly from the inside to the outside instead of the outside to the inside. And so that might strike that thought process in there and go, we might actually have that problem as well. So then I'm actually creating a new, issue and that I'm going to help solve. And just by my talking points and just knowing the industry and kind of just relating to that vertical that you're prospecting.
I love that. So you're a methodical person, and I think part of your skill set is organization, like you said, like structure. Most people don't even understand their different client profiles that they serve, right? Like I love that you said, hey, if I'm already serving pharmaceutical and I'm going to go after pharmaceutical, I need to learn what we're already doing and what's already working within pharmaceutical. And then that way you can leverage it. So a lot of people, they come in, and this is just like a great point here that you just triggered in my brain is like a lot of your clients aren't even aware of what problems they might have, right? They're not even sure. Because they've been, like you said, they've been doing it one way, or how many times that it happened that you bring a new facility manager, he sees that it's already done. Some are proactive and change it and audit it. Some are just like, hey, are you guys having problems? I don't think so. Okay, cool. And so they don't move anything. The best part of sales, or the first step to influencing anybody to do anything or doing sales, is just bring them aware, open their mind, like get their attention. First is attention. Second, open their mind. And then once you have their attention and you open their mind a little bit, because most humans are closed-minded. That's just a fact. Even all of us, in depending on the topic, it's like, oh, you want to talk about football? Oh, I know more than you about football. Right. I'm closed-minded, right? I'm not going to learn because I think I know more, right? So first, attention. Second, open mind. Once you open their mind, it's like what you're saying. Make them aware of something. So you're first getting their attention by saying, hey, we already work with our pharmaceutical companies. Okay, interesting. mind if I share how we clean over there? Because I'm wondering if you had the same issue they're having. Now they're like, what? And then you actually present the problem or make them aware of the problem, and then they're like, well, wait, what? Now you have my attention. I'm open-minded to what you just said, and you definitely just made me aware of something. And then that's when you begin the relationship. I love everything that you just explained right there, man. How do you stay updated with your like profiles, with your client profiles? Like, how often do you visit them? Now you're like, how often do you build out those profiles, or how often would you recommend someone to, like, hey, go visit all your accounts, figure out what they got going on, all those things? Like, give us some insight on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're like building your prospecting list and you come up with, okay, I want to attack 10 elephants. I want to go after 25 mid-sized accounts, and then I want to go after, I don't know, 18 to 20 small accounts. So you build out that based on your vertical. And then, of course, based on the size of the company, you need to build out a timeline. And so with the bigger the client, of course, the longer the timeline. And so I know for a fact on these larger clients, they're going to go out to RFP for 3 years, every 3 years. So let's just say I put Caterpillar on my list. My whole entire first month is probably to try to find out who that decision maker is. And then once I identify that decision maker for a national contract, then I'm basically going to put them on a month to month like follow up. And that different follow up programs could be me just stopping by, coming in there, saying hi. I call them the day before I arrive into town. And then I say, hey, I'm going to be there around tomorrow at lunchtime. Are you able to sneak out for lunch, or would it be fine if I just stop by the facility? And so I put them on different cadences and different activities. So some of them I might try to take out to the golf course if I know he's a golfer, or I might try to take him to a football game if he's a big Georgia football game and there's a game in town. I'll buy the tickets. A lot of organizations don't allow that, so you got to be aware of that too as well. But just understand your target. And then on the smaller to medium sized accounts, I would say get a cadence. And once you find out who that decision maker is, follow up with them once a week or maybe once every other week. Be a little quicker on that and force the issue a little more, because those are most likely going to be people that are spending their money. The cool thing about hunting a well or going after the larger ones is those people are trying to solve problems. They're not really worrying about their money because it's the company's money. It's not their specific money. If you're going after a karate shop and you have to talk to the owner to go clean it, that's coming out of his pocketbook. If you're going to talk to indirect procurement at Coca-Cola, she's trying to solve her problem. So it's more about solving the issue instead of it becoming a money management, a budget game proposal or a price check, whatever you want to call those. But yeah, that's why I also like going after the larger ones, because it's more about solving the problem than saving $1 or $2. And in this environment here in 2022 with labor rates where they're at, it's going to be hard to save anybody money. So, and we are in the labor game. So
would you say that selling a smaller to medium-sized company is harder than selling a bigger company from an emotional, like to pull the actual trigger versus length? Because I think people say it's hard to sell a bigger one, but that's just time. You got to know what game you're playing. And I love what you just said. Oh, Coca-Cola, this big one, I know RFP comes out in 2 years. I know they go up. I'm going to build out my timeline based on 2 years. I love that. No one's ever said that here. So that's an awesome one. But then you also said the smaller ones are more emotional. It's their money. It's faster, but it's harder. So would you say that the difficulty is harder on the smaller ones, but the complexity is more on the bigger ones? Like, what do you think, someone listening to this?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were talking about this not too long ago too. So I think the prospecting is tougher on the bigger ones, and I think the close is easier on the bigger ones. So I think it's easier to prospect the smaller ones and harder to close those. And I think it's easier or harder to prospect the bigger ones and easier to close them. Yep, because you're solving issues instead of spending their money out of their pocket. Because a karate shop, at the end of the day, he really don't care about the cleaning. He knows it has to be done because of his students and everything, and he don't want to spend that money. At Coca-Cola, they care about the cleaning, and and they got to make sure that everything's top notch. And so it's more about solving the
I
problems.
love that.
So,
I love that. It's hard for people to notice that because they don't understand what you just said. I don't think you understand what you just said because I was like, I love it. The whole like game plan. The bigger the size of the account, the bigger the timeline you have to give yourself. The harder it is to make the first contact, but the easier it is to close once you're patient enough to get there. That right there, like we've had accounts where we are just prospecting and prospecting, and our biggest client, or our longest tenured client here with us, has been with us for 2 years, right?
oh, that's good.
A commercial cleaner, like not because we're not a commercial cleaner, right? We hunt on behalf of our commercial cleaner companies. So he's been with us for 2 years. A lot of the first ones that join, they come with us for 90 days and they're like, I want these big 100,000 square foot walkthrough, $1 million square foot walkthrough, a day porter jobs that are $40,000 a month and 500, $2 million.
Everybody wants those.
And I'm like, but they want to do it in 90 days and they want to see that. And I love that the one that's been with us the longest, 2 years, he's like, I'll never leave just simply because I know that it's a contact sport and I know that eventually everything's going to come full circle. And it's funny, this year, the last like 4 or 5 months, he's closed like over $500,000 alone because he's like, eventually a big one came through and she's like, finally, we're leaving the cleaner that we have. We're ready to take you in. Boom. And then right now he's closing other 2 sales. But
That's awesome.
he gets the long game. And if there's no big opportunity or big appointment, again, back to what we spoke about, a big walkthrough, but he's having coffee, he sees email exchanges, he's waiting, he's playing the waiting game, right? He sees that. And it's funny that not a lot of people see that. So I'm going to ask you that question. You came from marketing, came into this. So you probably went for faster sales cycles to kind of fast. And then now you're like, okay, now we're taking our time. How did you grow that patience? And why do you think a lot of people lose the patience in the meantime?
I grew the patience, and this is going to sound silly, but because I'm married to a Russian. But no, I did grow the patience by just understanding that small wins equal big wins, and so I really think that you really got to dial into the small wins when you're going after elephant hunting than the larger. Than just focusing on the end goal, because everybody, like you said, wants that ideal prospect. Everybody wants that perfect prospect, and so you can't go get the perfect prospect without going through and trial and error with the other one. So what I would recommend is open up your hunting prospect list fully, and then try to dial it down to what you want to target, and really go specific and start planning each specific client as far as your approach and being strategic about it.
So I know we're reaching the time here, so I have 2 questions left for you.
Yep.
The first one, somebody wants to become an awesome at sales, but they can't hang out with you or I all the time. I'm just kidding. That sounded terrible. What recommendations, what books? As you could tell by my screen right here, like I have a lot of sales books. I love reading. I love learning. What recommendations would you give someone when it comes down to resources or influencers on LinkedIn? I love following influencers that I know speak to what I want to learn. Would you recommend to them if they want to become badasses at sales?
Ian Altman.
Especially big accounts, like we're talking whale accounts.
Yeah, Ian Altman, same side selling. We talked about getting on the same side a lot. A lot of that comes from Ian Altman. He's great. He actually does a lot of sales conferences, and then has a book that was on, I think, on the New York bestsellers last year. So
I just saw it this week, actually.
yeah,
it's interesting.
It's
same
awesome.
book.
It's good information, especially when you're going after those bigger sales cycle. It talks a lot about solving the issues and solving their problems and getting on the same side. A lot of what we talked about today. And then I actually do a lot of my motivation from a football coach, Mike McDaniel. He's out of Miami.
Mike
Dolphins.
McDaniel from the Dolphins. Interesting.
I like him a lot. I've been following him since he came out of Denver, then went to the 49ers. I really like his mindset. I followed him when he called X's and O's, and now he's a coach, and he really understands the people.
Where do you follow him, by the way, Aaron?
I just follow him
on LinkedIn, or does he have other stuff?
He has a Twitter, and then I do a lot of his YouTube interviews that he does. He does a lot with the Dolphins.
Interesting.
So I do a lot with him.
Which is doing
because-
great, by the way. He just beat the Bill. I mean, 3-0 with the Dolphins, beat the Bills. Like, looking good.
He's semi-genius. He's amazing. So I wouldn't say that I always pick from the sales guys because it's always understanding from a general manager standpoint or operator standpoint too, because those are a lot of guys that we're selling into. And so I always ask my wife too, because she's more on the operations side. And so I asked for her point of view, and I know that your counterpart did that with his wife one time at the University of Colorado Boulder. That's great. And I would have more of those conversations, people that's not in that industry. And another thing I would say, guys, is we didn't touch on this, but I'll give you one more ninja trick, is dress the part. So if you're going into an industrial manufacturing place, have your hard hat, have your goggles, have your earplugs, have your safety vest on, have your steel-toe boots, be ready to go, because they're not going to hire somebody in a suit and jacket to go into an industrial type of environment to clean it. So dress the role. If you're going into a medical office, dress the role. If you're going into procurement, probably wear a suit. Know who you're talking to, know your audience, and really dive into solving their issues. Every time that I do a good proposal and I know it's good, it's because I recapped our whole entire 2-year conversation into one 30-minute snippet. And so I really paid attention. They noticed that I'm listening. I'm there to solve the problems and do a good job for you. And that's how you really grow these elephants and that human interaction, from just going from your daily transaction to really going into those conversations. And that's what I really like. Is I like the chase. I like the journey. I like the story of how you got there.
I love that. I love that you touched on so many. Dress the part. Please make sure you dress the part. I love that, because it's about them, not about you, right? People think
100%.
It's about the salesperson. It's not about us. The other part, because you said Mike McDaniels, I actually, for the first year ever since he became coach of Miami, now I'm like following him closely, because I'm like, I'm intrigued. Like, no one believed in Tua. He built out this whole system and the defense, and I'm like, this is so intriguing. And I remember one of his interviews, literally recently, when they were down to the Ravens by like 20-something points. Yeah. And there's a video where like all the players are freaking out on the sideline and hitting helmets, and he's just like analyzing. And then at the end of the game when they won, he's like, I wanted to see, he said it jokingly, but he's like, I wanted to see who we would be and what it would look like if we were down by 2 to 3 touchdowns.
Yep.
And then I wanted to figure out what our game plan would be like that. And it looks like paid off there. They were down to the Bills, paid off there. Like, it's so interesting how he deals, and he never is shaken. So I'm going to ask you one more question. Let's say somebody's like, you know what? I don't know if you've caught this in the podcast before, but at the end, I always ask, somebody looks at it, sees the title, sees like national sales, whale hunting, sees the show notes and goes, interesting. But before I commit 50 minutes, 45 minutes to this interview, I'm just going to see what Aaron gives me as an advice at the end of the interview. And then based on that advice and based on what he wants to be known for or something he wants to give me, then I'll go back and rewatch and actually watch the whole podcast. What would that be? One advice, one strategy, one ninja skill, or one just message you want to give somebody to be remembered by in this podcast?
Yeah. They call me the showstopper. So the reason why I'm here is because, and the reason why I think you should listen to this whole entire podcast is because if you want to go out well hunt, you need to follow the money making activities, being the MMA that we talked about, and then also just understanding your client and understanding how to solve their problems. So I would say be a chameleon, adapt, and be proactive instead of reactive, and learn more by listening to this whole entire podcast.
Boom. I love it. How can people connect with you, brother?
I think the best way to connect with me is my LinkedIn page. So you can follow me at Aaron Koon, Head of Business Development, Blue Chip Pros.
I love it. Well, man, a lot of golden nuggets. We're definitely going to have to do a part 2 and dive deeper on some of these things. There's just too many golden nuggets, too much fire. I really appreciate you. And guys, if you got something from this, go ahead and reach out to Aaron on LinkedIn. Just thank him for his time. Send him something. Tell him like, hey, that was amazing. And begin building that relationship, right? So once again, Aaron, thank you so much, brother.
Hey, thank you. You're doing amazing things over there.